Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to DirectXbox number 21. Been a little while, actually. A lot of things been happening, whether it's trips out to conventions or Nate just having to manage a hectic schedule. We are here, though. We made it. Maybe what we'll do is if it gets really hectic again and stuff, maybe we'll just pre-record this show and post it up so it's there at least. Might just do that. What do you think, Nate? I'm joined by Nate, by the way. He's here.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. But I mean, the last episode would have been on July 5th.
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah, with it being a holiday weekend, I think people can understand.
Okay, we'll go with that. We have a very understanding audience. So shout out to the 007 Supreme Claw. We got Blizmo in the chat. Brian, shout out to everyone coming through. We had a fun couple of weeks. So we're back though with DirectXbox, hanging out. Got some Xbox topics to talk about. We got the Game Pass situation, tiers and price changes. FTC is back in the mix, by the way. Back to frustrate Microsoft. We'll see how that turns out. If the Amazon bundle with some marketing slogan that is not going over the greatest with Xbox fans, I noticed, specifically for the console. And we did have the Halo TV series officially canceled, at least with Paramount. And then there was a rumor flying around about 343. So Halo in a bit of turmoil right now, actually, Nate. So and that is as Xbox as it gets. And you know what I've noticed? I feel like people kind of forget that now, that Halo is pretty much Xbox. So that's there's a lot to get to there, which we'll go over. I do want to give a shout out, of course, to the good people over on the Spawncast Network. It's over on Spawncast or patreon.com/Spawncast. You can become a member there, support all the different shows that we produce here. And I want to give a shout out, of course, to John O, Joshua Butts, Mr. Joby, Justin Maverick. We have the Game Orb, Trent A, Drunk on Tacos. We just had the letter A, and a Billion Cats. Oh, and then I'll give a shout out to Adam as well. Baldizin? Shout it over there. Yes. Thanks to all of them for helping to support the show. So we did, as I mentioned, there's a lot of topics to get to, but I do want to ask you, Nate, because it has been so long. I just wanted to know what you've been playing. What you've been up to? What's been the move recently?
Just kind of playing really random releases as they hit the various platforms. Playing some Sly Cooper on PlayStation 5. Have been playing Gene the Arc on PlayStation 5 as well. We'll give Ratchet and Clank Size Matters a look pretty soon. Also been dabbling in Game Pass a bit. You had the 10-hour free trial for college football hit this week, and tonight, or earlier today, you had Capcom's Kunitsu Path of the Goddess also hit Game Pass. I gave that a download. We'll give it a play sometime this weekend, but I did play the demo when that was available a few weeks ago. So, just dabbling in various games.
I'm downloading it right now during the show. I'm going to get this going because I said I would play it. Okay. Flintlock, unfortunately, it seems like there's some glitches or things going on with that game. I don't know. I've talked to people who played it and they say it needs some patches. So they're telling me wait until like version 1.2 or 1.3 or something so the stuff can get sorted, which is unfortunate because I was at least interested in Flintlock, but seems like there's just some issues fundamentally with the game. In terms of it just like functioning correctly. So I'll wait for that. And I'm going to go to Kunitsu Gami, the Path of the Goddess. We're going to go with that one on Game Pass.
Yeah, it's a very unique game. Something you wouldn't really anticipate from Capcom, but it reviewed exceptionally well. And it's only around a 17 gigabyte download on Game Pass. And the game isn't really that long based on the reviews and some of the impressions given so far. So it feels as though it's a nice little summer type release. It has a very creative idea, being essentially a 3D tower defense game where you do have main control of a character, so you are in the mix performing combos and special attacks and such. But I think it's going to be a game I will enjoy for as long as it lasts.
Okay, fair enough. And then we did get the 10-hour trial for college football, which, I mean, you did play that. So we can just get into that now, actually. You played some of it. I've been curious about this release for a while because the last one we had was NCAA 14. And people may not realize this. That was an incredibly popular game back then. I remember we get it on trade in sometimes with like just a whole 360, like whole system to trade everything in. And the thing would be gone immediately and it would not be cheap. It would be priced at like $40, would not last. I say 40 because it was used and it was like 2 years later or something. Is like we're selling this 2014 college football game in 2016 for like $40 and it would fly off the shelf every time. No questions asked. It was gone. Xbox 360 every time. So people have been waiting for this and it's been pretty successful so far. What was the number you said, Nate, before we went live?
Just for the early access version or the deluxe edition, it sold 2.2 million copies.
So at $100 a pop. That's crazy. And this is a current gen only game, right? It's not for Xbox One or PS4.
Right. Yep. Just Xbox Series and PlayStation 5.
That's crazy. It sold that much early access, $100.
And the other thing that's been noted from a variety of retailers like Walmart, Amazon, and such is that all of the next gen hardware, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, have all seen massive boost in sales. So people are purchasing hardware just for this game.
I saw someone mention, this was on Twitter X, I saw they mentioned that the Xbox Series S saw a significant spike to the point where they compared it to the launch timing for the system, which is crazy. But I thought about that, and Josie is a perfect example of like the college kid who is looking for the system that's the most affordable and also the one that would fit in to their lifestyle of not wanting to keep a bunch of physical media around because like you got to have people over or parties happen around your dorm or wherever. And it's like things go missing or just traveling with it, having to pack a bunch of stuff up. The Series S does make a lot of sense. So I get why that would actually sell really well for college football.
And you also have to factor in, it is a cheaper alternative for people to get into next gen. And if you really just want to play this one game, you may as well invest as little as possible to get a quality experience. So to see Series S just get a huge sales boost is really not that surprising. And I am going to be curious to see what hardware does for the month of July due to the impacts of this game and see how much of a carry it has leading into August and even September once college football actually begins, because that's going to generate even more interest.
Right.
And I think a lot of people in the gaming community don't really understand how big of a deal college football is in North America.
It's crazy.
It's bigger than the NFL in certain regions because this is almost their religion in certain states. And they follow their teams with such passion. And when you look at a college game day on any Saturday, you look at full stadiums, and we're talking 100, 110,000 people every single week. You always sell out. You have the college kids in attendance. You have the alumni. It's a huge deal. And for the game to have sold over 2 million copies before it officially released, that's nothing short of astounding. EA has a major release on their hands, and I cannot wait to see the figures in another month or so, just to get an idea of how well the game's really tracking. Because in the early access period, there were tweets and such out there where you had over 700,000 people online.
Yeah. I was seeing that too. It's crazy stuff. And then what's really interesting are the reviews so far are incredibly positive. I think over on, I'm looking at it now on the PS5 currently sitting. It's only with 8 reviews. So this is one of those ongoing things, I'm sure, where there's a lot of like, there's a bunch of like IGN doesn't even have theirs in yet. But it's currently sitting at an 89 on the PS5 and an 83 on the Xbox Series. The Xbox is on 6 reviews. So I assume when IGN's, for example, comes through, it would go in there. And I'm kind of thinking some of these reviews are going to be 8.5, 9. Like people seem really, really sold on this release.
Yeah, it generated a lot of excitement, and to see it reviewing well is definitely promising for EA and just college football fans in general, because again, there's going to be a significant amount of individuals who will buy college football who will not be purchasing Madden. But you're going to have a little bit of a cross where people will be purchasing both games. And I'm curious if EA tries to use the momentum of college football and lead it into Madden, because that's coming out in just over a month as well. So it's going to be an interesting time for football fans, and we might be feasting exceptionally well if you're a fan of football in 2024.
You know, what was always interesting back in the day about this is what would happen is college football, NCAA football at the time, would come out, and then a month later Madden would come out. But I feel like there were two different teams within EA who would work on these games, then also do crossover
Mhm.
so that you could take your player from NCAA and you would be able to put them into the draft in the NFL and like continue that on. But those teams, from what I remember, would actually compete in some aspects within EA to produce a better football game. Same kind of technology. Obviously, they're running like they have the same kind of engines and stuff they can tap into, but there was competition. So I do wonder if this is gonna maybe light a bit of a fire underneath that Madden team.
I mean, we can definitely hope because we are old. We remember the times when Madden would launch on something like the PlayStation 2, and that was a big deal.
It's big. Yeah.
That was one of the biggest releases you could have on your platform. And one of the talking points way back in early 2000s was that one of the reasons the Dreamcast failed is because EA didn't support it. It didn't have Madden. Even though you had NFL 2K from Visual Concepts, it just didn't have the reputation that a Madden game had. And now Madden has definitely kind of fallen to the side a bit. But for college football to come out to such stellar reviews and such huge sales and popularity, I hope it does push the Madden team harder to really refine what they've created and take that next step. Make Madden relevant again. Because there's sometimes you just want to play a good football game. And I just don't feel as though Madden's delivered that experience probably for the last decade.
Yeah, it's been unfortunate. It's kind of been just a footnote, but it's a default buy for a lot of people, like who are just big Madden fans. Oh, the new Madden's out. Yeah, pick that up on the way home. We'll check it out when you get in. That kind of like it's they didn't really think about it, make decisions on reviews, nothing. It's part of that mainstream constant. So I think Madden's kind of capped at where it's going to sell unless they make a big like all of a sudden epiphany of this new mode or this game feels next gen. It feels like a significant leap. Maybe they're comfortable where they are and they're just constantly selling that. And of course, there's so many microtransactions, I'm sure, attached to those things. Same with all like a lot of these other EA sports games. So I would like to think though that there would be some pride involved and the team with Madden would be like, well, hold on, we can do that too. Back to the drawing board. But we'll be ready in 12 months. that's that's always been the issue. Be ready in 12 months. Whereas college football, they've been off for 9-10 years.
Yep.
A little bit of time to get things. Even if they started working on it 3 years ago, that's still way more time than what Madden gets every year. So
Yeah, definitely a lot of love put into this game because the presentation of the game is really strong. I played a few games. I played as Notre Dame, and to see the
mhm.
team's entrance when you are playing as the home team, they show the players pounding the sign, which is an authentic thing. That's what the players
Mm.
do. You have the Fighting Irish mascot out there. And one of the elements that I really enjoyed in terms of the presentation is that I was going to do the kickoff. And because there's so much energy in the stadium, the camera is shaking up and down as I'm preparing to kick. And then on the first play, I got an interception and that camera is shaking. It's just
That's
little
cool.
things like that really add to the atmosphere in the feel. And college football has nailed that in terms of presentation. It feels like you're watching an authentic college game day broadcast. And that's something that I feel Madden hasn't really had in recent releases. Whereas this just captures the passion that makes college football such a thrill to watch.
Yeah, I'm happy for all the college football fans out there. They got their game back and it's actually good. And on top of that, it seems like a lot of the players who were basically just along for the ride, when it was 10 years ago or whatever, now are actually getting paid money. So there you go. I think that's something that I think always should have happened is like, hey, you're using their likenesses, you're doing all this stuff with them. They're making tons of money like NCAA. Yeah, you can pass them along. And they are. So it feels like kind of a win-win-win now. Let's see. And that's out now, right? That did
Yes, the
release.
release
Yes.
date was officially today.
They were in early access for a couple days. Yeah. Very
Mhm.
good. Very good.
So they could
So there you
be
go. College
well over 3
football
million sales by now.
out now. I've still been basically locked in with Elden Ring. That's all. Just a lot of Elden Ring. I got to the final boss. And now I'm just exploring. So I feel like this map, I'm just going to end up 100% and just walking around finding stuff. Still finding more bosses, though. Optional bosses everywhere. Keep finding them. So, and then I think soon I'll just go and finish up the final boss. Although these statue tree things are just so random. I'll find them, but I don't know which ones I found, which ones I haven't. So that's kind of the hang up right now, is just figuring out where more of them are so I can get to maybe level 18 or 19 and wrap this thing up. But that's been the main thing right now. Oh, and I restarted Sekiro for no other reason than I just wanted to restart it.
It's a really random game to go back to.
While I'm playing Elden Ring, and I'm like, yeah, I did that. Demon Souls was good. I kind of want to go back and remember Sekiro again. I was on Summoning Sign, and it was brought up, and I was like, I do kind of want to check that out again. So I just restarted it just to see how it had been years since I've played it. I was like, let me just check it out again. So, and now I have Path of the Goddess now downloaded. So there you go. I can play that next.
Quality.
Let's talk about this Game Pass tier situation, Nate. We had a bit of a shift here in Game Pass now. Microsoft made the announcement, although we kind of had it rumored a bit, and then they came out and confirmed that this was happening to different outlets. So it was really weird. It's like the information spilled out there, and then Microsoft came back and confirmed it. I don't know if that's just part of their PR stuff. They're like, oh, we'll let the outlets break the news to the people, soften the blow a bit, and then we'll come in and confirm it. But they've done a bit of a shakeup here when it comes to just Game Pass, as well as their online service. So like their online now has jumped from like the base tier is 60 to 75. That's like their core. And you need that just to play online. So unfortunately, they're going the wrong way. I want one of these companies to disrupt, and mostly it's Microsoft or Sony, because Nintendo just started charging for online really this generation. I want one of them to disrupt everything and make it free to play online on their console, but no one's pulling the trigger on it. And now I'm looking at this like, well, I guess they're not going to, because they also gave a reason to the FTC as to why they have not degraded their service that we'll get to. But the big thing that people were looking at were they changed up their PC, like their standard, or they have their standard tier, they have their ultimate tier, and then they have their PC tier. So PC is now $12 a month. We have standard at $15 a month, and we have ultimate at $20 per month. Ultimate and PC do get day one releases, as they've basically sold the service on since 2018, I think, is when they made that official announcement that day one release would go in. The weird thing is that standard does not get day one releases. It also doesn't get like cloud streaming. It is basically the console variant now. It has online play. And it has, I guess, just what I would say at this point, a curated list of games. And I say curated because they say it's a case-by-case basis for day one releases on other, like the newest releases on other tiers, to go into standard tier. That's $15 a month. To me, very, very strange situation. They didn't want to necessarily leave that tier, that pricing, and just go only 20. So I guess now they have this weird in-between tier where they're trying to have it make sense. But I feel like most people are subscribing to Game Pass with the idea of having these day one releases like an Indiana Jones, like an Avowed. So do you think anyone's going to really be that interested in this standard tier?
And when we look at some of the figures that Microsoft had officially put out, the Ultimate tier accounted for somewhere in the area of 80 to 85% of all Game Pass subscriptions to start with. So the amount of people who were even aware of Game Pass console prior to this change was likely very minimum. Because I had asked some friends when I was hearing these rumors going back a couple of months, and they were like, wait, there's something called Game Pass console? Like, yeah, it's the third tier. It's like, what do I get with that? Like, you get day one games, but you don't get Xbox Live. And they never even knew that tier existed. All they knew was what's now Game Pass Core and Game Pass Ultimate. So this standard tier, I understand why Microsoft still offers it. And it's definitely a play of, let's limit what you get because we want to make Ultimate all the more inviting to you. For just a few extra dollars a month, you get those day one games. Versus you not getting much of anything. You're going to get a curated list where eventually our games will come to the service, but they might be 6 or 12 months later with first-party games, We don't know how third-party games will exactly roll out on that service right now. So from a business perspective, it makes sense. You want to make it as uninviting and unattractive as you can because you want people to go for the ultimate tier where you make the most money. And when you have 80 to 85% of current subscribers already on that higher tier, naturally you're not going to prioritize a mid-tier offering. So what do? You make this weird change. But if you are a current Game Pass console subscriber, nothing changes for you except for the price. You still get games day one. You are grandfathered in with that perk. So this is really only impacting new subscribers. So if you are interested in Game Pass right now because you just purchased an Xbox with college football, I would assume the first thing you're going to do is get Game Pass Ultimate because you need Xbox Live to play the game online. Though if you really don't care about any type of future games, you would go with Game Pass Core. And I think one of their flaws is branding Game Pass Core as a Game Pass tier because it's not Game Pass. It's just Xbox Live rebranded. And I think they should do away with the Game Pass branding on that tier because it just creates a lot of confusion as to what exactly do I get with Game Pass. Go back to calling it Xbox Live. That's all it is, aside from the 30 or so curated games that they offer you alongside it. So in truth, in terms of Game Pass, you have three options. You have Standard, PC, or Ultimate. PC naturally is only going to appeal to those with a PC, whereas Ultimate is going to be the thing that I would imagine you're trying to attract the majority of consumers to. At $20 a month now, you have to wonder, is that really a fair price to lure in the casual audience? And I think it's a bit too high to really grow the service.
It's getting kind of expensive, yeah.
And the only way you can really justify that price point is that you have to have a steady flow of releases. You have to have significant releases at least every quarter because you're now charging $240 a year. You have to release at least $240 worth of first-party content to justify that price because Game Pass is supposed to appear as a bargain, where it is cheaper than buying the games individually. And up to this point, Microsoft has not been able to have that steady flow of releases that would make Game Pass essentially a steal. This year, maybe that will change. If you have Indiana Jones, Avowed, and Flight Simulator, and Stalker 2, and such all coming out within the next 6 to 8 months, you could definitely make that case of, wow, Game Pass paid for itself with those titles, as long as those titles are of interest to you. But Game Pass Standard, for new subscribers, there's no incentive or reason really to go with it.
It seems strange because the day one release, obviously that's a big compelling aspect to it. You want the day one releases for maybe console. And that's the thing that gets me is the entire idea. The thing I thought they were really going to build up and push as this is why it's so valuable was the cloud component. And that still feels very much like an afterthought for this entire service years and years later, to where day one releases is it. That's what they need to put on this ultimate tier. So if you are a console only gamer, you are also technically paying for PC and you're paying for cloud to get the day one release. And there's a good chance if you're just console for Xbox, you're never going to use the PC or cloud component.
Right.
And that's just paying to use the console. That's it.
And that's where I find myself in. I'm not using the PC perk of Game Pass Ultimate. I'm not a PC gamer. I don't have a PC that could...
You got a ROG Ally?
Yes, and the majority of the games that I am playing on there will just be smaller games like Neon White, a game I don't necessarily want to sit in front of my TV to play, so I'll play it on the ROG Ally. But at the same time, it's not as though I'd be like, oh yeah, I need to play it there. It's just a complimentary, secondary, nice little perk to have. But cloud-based stuff, it just fits into Microsoft's overall agenda and initiative of you can play our games anywhere you can log into your account. And we see that now with the Amazon Fire Stick. That if you have Game Pass Ultimate, if you have a Fire Stick, it doesn't matter where you are, you can play the games. Great. But that's still just a secondary feature that's complementary as an alternative means of playing your games somewhere else outside of your home, away from your console. It's never going to be a priority. It's never going to be the primary consumption model for any consumer. It's always going to be just an alternative means of doing so.
It feels like they were banking so much on cloud, and I have not. I feel like I haven't seen it really grow. Maybe like they were anticipating, say, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I feel like that's when the big cloud push really started. We were hearing rumblings of Google trying to do their own console that turned into a streaming platform, and they still had a controller and a little box you could buy, but saw that. Sony's been spinning their wheels at it for a while now, even buying Gaikai, and Microsoft started to move on cloud. And I really haven't seen the improvement that I've seen with something like a GeForce Now. We're to the point where Microsoft is allowing you to launch games with GeForce Now from their storefront on your PC. And if you've used GeForce Now recently, it is shockingly good. It's probably the best streaming service I've used. It is very, very good. You have to pay a little extra because you get like the RTX 4080 experience and that sort of thing. But you can also do like a day pass. If people out there just want to try it, you could spend it was like $5 for the day, and you can play for like 8 hours. I want to say they have like a time limit on it, but you'll have access to a rig for the day, and you could try it out. And the latency that's where I thought Xbox was going to get to by this time. But if you use xCloud or any of the streaming stuff, it still feels very much how it was years ago when they were like, it's still technically in like the beta. Like you see that launch up, it's, oh, we're still collecting information. It feels weird because I thought that was their push, was cloud. And it feels like it's just kind of stalled this whole time.
Some of the stories we've seen over the years was that Microsoft has they've kind of put cloud on a back seat. They're not investing as much as they were originally. And even though they do see it as a future proposition, it's just not a priority for them right now until they're able to figure things out further. And maybe they make that bigger push once we get closer to the next generation launch, which if they have a standard piece of hardware as well as a handheld, then you have cloud being involved in some way. Maybe that's when we see that higher investment. But right now, there's still not that much engagement or use for cloud. People aren't taking their phones or their tablets and throwing on controllers and playing Starfield. It's just not an
That's true.
appealing thing. And, Sony has dabbled in various means of cloud. They've also done their streaming device with the PlayStation Portal, and it's selling well. But what was the reaction most people had when they saw that device? They said, why can't we just have a native handheld to play my PS4, my PS5 games on? So cloud is great as that secondary complementary thing. If you're on the go, you're in a hotel room, you plug in an Amazon Fire Stick instead of lugging a system with you. But outside of that, I just struggle to really see the appeal of it.
The other issue I have right now with this whole thing, they have Game Pass Ultimate. Maybe some people in the chat can maybe give me an opposing opinion to this, but have you used their PC app for Xbox? It's not very good. it needs work still. And that's basically what you rely on to use Game Pass. You use their application to get the games through your Xbox or Microsoft account. And maybe one of the solves is indeed a handheld, because then it's like, okay, rather than have to use a ROG Ally or a Windows PC that has to use this kind of janky app, you have something that's just built in system level that we've designed specifically for this handheld screen. And then you don't have to go through that. And now, to me, it would make more sense, because I feel like I would use PC Game Pass a bit more consistently if it was on a handheld that had the UI and stuff designed around it. It was kind of like how you have it on your Xbox now, just on a handheld.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. Is that if you don't have a welcoming application, why are people going to use it?
Yeah, that's my question right now. Is this push currently? I would assume that a lot of the games we're about to see are going to make it feel worth it with the push, this bump in pricing. And there were rumors that Call of Duty MW3 is like imminently going to release into Game Pass. And it was funny, we were talking about the season, because we'll kick around Call of Duty here and there, which now they have like mutations and stuff in Warzone, which is pretty funny. But who's going in, Nate, to the next season for Call of Duty?
For some bizarre reason, WWE superstars.
I'll give them credit. They are at least creative with the stuff. Like they had Gundams in there at one point, which was weird. But now they have WWE superstars, you say, wrestlers going in. And this, by the way, it's happening this week. So occasionally we'll be like, hey, when's that new season start? Because usually something with Warzone happens, whether it's like a map or playlist change. July 24th, Nate. Is that, or maybe the 23rd, those 24 hours. You think that's a good time to launch MW3 into Game Pass? First Call of Duty game we've seen in the service to preemptively set up this new season.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think I think that's kind of the opportune time to introduce it to Game Pass. I do wonder what type of impact it would have, though, because at this point the game is 10 months old. You could already play Warzone and such. That's free to play. So what you would be getting here is the standard multiplayer and the campaign that otherwise you wouldn't have had access to.
Campaign's not very good.
Like, I just don't know if this is going to sway consumers in any way.
No, but it'll be that extra bit of value. And then that's the thing, though. How do you add Call of Duty games to Game Pass now outside of MW3, as it seems like they might be set up to do, without taking away shine from Black Ops 6? That it's this weird tightrope they have to walk. And I mean, on one hand, you could technically release a Call of Duty every single month, and then people will decide where they want to play. And I don't think there's gonna be a shortage of people for Call of Duty pretty much ever. Because if you go back and play Black Ops 2, you'll still find matches. Like, it's backwards compatible. You'll find them. In fact, it's pretty quick. You'll be shocked. It's like, oh, you need 48 players. We got 48 different players waiting right now. Don't worry. Like, it's very fast. So I think they could do that, and it wouldn't take away shine from Black Ops. I don't think it take away shine from Warzone, which is obviously their big moneymaker right now. But then there is that concern about just overcrowding that part of Game Pass. But I feel like you get to a position where you just have a Call of Duty section on Game Pass, and you just show it off everywhere. Look how valuable this service is now. I know we moved up the price, but look at this.
I think a good way to do that. I think a good way to do that would have been just to have a huge drop of all of the back catalog Call of Duty games going back to 360. Because a lot of those games, as you said, they're still being played. And we saw this as recently as last year, where people were playing Modern Warfare 2, they were playing Modern Warfare, they were playing World at War, where thousands of individuals were playing the games. You throw something like that onto Game Pass, you might sway some of that nostalgia, where people say, oh, wow, I play, especially with the 360 store shutting down and everything, that you'd have people kind of have those college remembrance of, I played those games way back in college. I should buy a Series S and play them again. See if I can get some of my friends to do it too. Or even with college football. Because you have a lot of people who are probably around our age who aren't that big into gaming, who are picking up college football because they want a good football game. And if they can get access to a Call of Duty game that they have fond memories of, they might consider. Though at the same time, they can easily just buy the game for $15 or $20, whatever it's currently sold for. But I think that type of offering would go a long way. And we do have the rumors that titles from ABK will be also added to Game Pass. I believe it's in August, is for Crash Bandicoot. So
yes,
maybe we're finally going to see a nice rollout where every single month we're getting an ABK installation leading up to Black Ops in October. But you still need a lot more. You need Spyro, you need Tony Hawk, Diablo 2. There's so many games that they can do, never mind just that Call of Duty back catalog. So it's curious to see how they're going to approach that vast collection of games that they now have access to.
Transformers games, make that happen with Hasbro. I'm there. I'll be on that right away. They found the hard drive. Apparently that was the thing.
So they claim.
So they claim. And then they are going to be, leveraging this new Call of Duty with the beta that's coming up at the end of August, where if you're part of Game Pass, you get in. No questions asked. You're in. So even the closed beta, there'll be an open beta as well, but the closed beta, you're in right away. So I am very interested to see if they will get any kind of movement with this big new Black Ops game, Call of Duty. Black Ops is, I think that's the well-known branch of Call of Duty right now. It's very popular. I'm very curious to see if that makes any kind of movement at all for Game Pass. Can it bump subscription numbers? I have to assume it will, but if it doesn't, there's some hard questions that are going to be asked if that doesn't move the needle.
I don't know if it's going to move the needle with this particular release. We're too deep into the generation. If you are playing Call of Duty with your friends and you've already made your system choice made, you're going to stick with that system. If we were at the start of a new generation, if next generation was right on the brink of, let's say, this November, and you have Call of Duty in Game Pass, you might have more of a conversation there where friends would say, hey, instead of buying Call of Duty every year, we'll get it on Game Pass. We're also going to get all these other offerings. So let's get it on Xbox to play together instead of buying PlayStation 6. But the fact that we're already 4 years into the generation, you've made your choice. That's set in stone at this point. You know where your ecosystem is and everything.
Man, can't even get the PC people in.
Nah.
Man, it's tough out here.
They're playing Concord right now.
Oh, no, no one's playing Concord. I looked at the numbers. No one's playing that.
It was like 2,200 people, wasn't it?
No, it was like 1,300 people an hour ago on.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not great.
You know what Microsoft should do? This is prime marketing. You add Tony Hawk to Game Pass, and you make the tweet saying, we're Hawk-2ing Tony Hawk to Game Pass. Because apparently the Hawk-2 thing is a huge meme. Everyone loves it. So get that girl spitting Tony Hawk on the Game Pass right now.
I was positive that would have been like a weekend thing and it would have been over, and it's still going for some reason.
She's getting, what, a reality show?
Why? Why? If she had never been there at that time, in that place that time, none of this would have happened. It's like that split second of a thing. It's crazy.
But I mean, couldn't you picture that trailer hitting Microsoft socials?
Yeah, I mean, that does sound like that does sound like something. Well, then they're going to be like, wait a minute. Is that a new Banjo game coming too? Were they teasing? Is Xbox teasing a Banjo game? The Tui.
Well, I guess you could say it as Hawk Tony.
Oh, that's a good one. Hawk Tony.
Yeah, Hawk Tony.
Hawk Tony. Yeah.
It just feels like some sort of marketing that would happen, and I'd be sure.
Oh no, there's definitely some that's like some boomer.
It's right there.
Marketing stuff. Like the suits
right
top.
There
like this is amazing.
Put it on TikTok. Put it on everything you can. Instagram. Sign the girl to the deal if you have to. Yeah,
get Tony Hawk. That's a good one to drop in. But I'm still waiting for I was actually playing that again on the PS5 recently. I played all the way through, beat it on the Xbox, did everything there. And then I even jumped over to the PS5 recently to play it there too. So I would like to see the next one in line for that 3 and 4, but they're never going to give me that. What a shame. But at least get into the Game Pass because it is a very, very good Tony Hawk game. So recommend it. Best selling one in the franchise, actually. So they had to shut it down. And
well, there were the rumors that there were discussions about remaking Tony Hawk 3 and 4, and it just didn't come together.
Yeah, I understand. There's a lot of licensing in that. I get it, but come on, it's like the trajectory is set up for it. It's going in the right direction, and Skate looks kind of sketchy right now. So
You were very hyped for Skate.
Yeah, but then it's gotten worse every time they've mentioned it. And like, oh, really? Come on.
Like, this
every time they show it off, there's something worse about it. It's like, gosh, can't you just make a regular Skate game? Why is it got to do all this stuff? Why is it got to try to reinvent the wheel? Literally.
Because it's a Skate game.
I know. They hate me. And real quick, while we're talking about Game Pass and all this stuff with cloud, we had the Amazon. So Amazon Prime Day happened. And usually on Amazon Prime Day, I buy storage, SD cards, boring stuff, really, because of stuff just for like recording and that. But there was a bundle for Fire. It was like the Fire 4K TV stick and an Xbox controller and Game Pass Ultimate. And the marketing was no console required. which has not gone over well, but with many of the console diehards online who are like, why are you doing this marketing where it says you don't need an Xbox to play these games? It's
That
it
type
is
of
an interesting
reaction,
marketing strategy.
the marketing makes sense when you really think about it, where it's just them saying, you don't need a console to play your games on the television that you have the Fire Stick plugged into.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as though anyone's going to buy the Fire Stick, pay $20 a month for Game Pass, and say, this is quality gaming. It's a secondary option for those already invested in the ecosystem. It's
Did
not
you
going to
see?
lure in new consumers.
Did you see Digital Foundry's video on the Fire Stick?
No, I can't imagine it went well.
It's not great. It's not a good experience, unfortunately. It's like the buffering's not very good, so it's very blocky looking when you're playing. It looks like a YouTube video is constantly trying to load in and like it's compressed, and it's just not. It's not great, unfortunately. I mean, when you do these cloud, to be honest, when you do the cloud streaming stuff, it's recommended that you do hardwire your system or your laptop or your PC or whatever you have. But when you have a phone or a Fire Stick or something, it's not possible. So you don't get great results, which is unfortunate. Even my TV that I tried because I have one of the Samsung TVs that had the app and you sync your controller up to the TV. Mine does have a LAN port. So I actually hardwire it. And that was not terrible. It wasn't native, obviously, but it actually wasn't the worst. I was surprised. But the Fire
Yeah,
Stick TV wasn't it.
the Fire Stick TV, I can only really see it being an appealing device for those who, let's say you have a game room, you have your Xbox in it, and for whatever reason, you want to play a game in your living room. Maybe it's a social game, and you have a Fire Stick where it's like, oh, I just have to log into my profile, and we can stream Jack in the Box. Or whatever social game is on the device that you either own or is on Game Pass.
Yeah, as Dusk Falls, that could probably work well.
Yeah, a game like As Dusk Falls, a nice visual novel, but something that's very basic. Like, that's where I see the appeal of that device. It's not something I personally would buy, but I just don't see where anyone would say, well, I really want to play Starfield, but I don't have $300 for a Series S, so let me buy a Fire Stick and play the game via streaming.
Right.
That's never going to be your primary means of playing a game. And I think a lot of the outrage is just misunderstanding what Microsoft is trying to offer here. They're just trying to have their product on another screen in your house outside of the hardware you already own.
How do we reach 2 billion gamers, though? Through the cloud.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. It's a pipe
2
dream.
billion. 2 billion. Yeah, it was just the marketing was a little weird. It's like you could just say, hey, you can use your Fire Stick TV. Like, you don't need that console. Throw that thing away. This is the real move. Amazon Fire Stick. I mean, the pricing change for Game Pass does kind of feel like they understand that their console subscription is sort of capped now, and they're just trying to extract more money from the people who have it. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business. There's inflation and everything. They're trying to boost the books.
Second price increase in 13 months.
Yeah, it's getting. Hopefully, this is kind of their cap. Because if they're going to try another price increase, let's say in an additional 13 months, even 20 months, you have to have a much stronger release lineup where you are delivering at least a game a quarter, maybe 2 games a quarter, just to create that sense of, hey, there's a lot of great value here. I'm getting way more than $240 worth of games in a single calendar year. So if you were to boost it to, let's say, $260, $280 a year, which at that point is kind of ridiculous, but you better be giving me $500 worth of first-party games at that point in a single calendar year. And third parties, they definitely add value to the service, but considering you have no idea what third-party games could be added to the service at any point, you can't really use those as, oh, they add value significant enough to justify the price. Because look at some of the games we got this year. You got Resident Evil 2, a fantastic game, but it's also several years old. You could buy the game for $20. Yep. So it's not exactly a reason you would subscribe to Game Pass to play Resident Evil 2 when it's far cheaper to buy the game individually. It's all about Microsoft's first party offerings that create that illusion of value. And they have
I
to
will
do a
say
better job of it.
Netflix price is kind of getting up there. Like it charged the other day and I looked and it was like 23 something. I was like, whoa. It has that's the thing with these subscription services. You don't even notice they creep up slowly. You notice where they are. And it's like, man, I remember when Netflix was like $11.99 or something, and that was a problem. I was like, oh my gosh, why is streaming so expensive now for this? Now we're like double that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it seems as though I think all of them recently had price increase, like Peacock and Paramount. Disney Plus had the huge price increase not that long
Yep.
ago. And then you have like HBO and Max. All of them are pushing their limits because some of these companies are also realizing they don't have enough subscribers to justify their original content. So you see some of them trying to do mergers and partners with other streaming services. Microsoft doesn't have that option available to them. So
Right.
all they can do is either raise the price or accept that you can't chase continuous growth. You have to accept what you're at and find means of drawing in new consumers, which right now they're not doing with Game Pass. You're not attracting new subscriptions because you're not offering enough value.
But they do have the ability to sell stuff on their platform too. Like they can sell games, accessories, microtransactions.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the best ways to do that, and this is why it's so strange to me the way that they're kind of rolling right now with some of their marketing, the best way to extract more money from each person that's accessing your service is by having them own an Xbox. That's why it's throwing me through a loop. Sometimes I see the marketing, I'm like, well, wouldn't it be better if they had the Xbox? Because then from their point of view, they'd be able to extract more money on average from each Xbox console user versus PC or versus cloud streaming. That's the thing that's kind of throwing me through a loop sometimes when I see it.
Yeah, it's definitely been some questionable business decisions, but whoever's handling the books, they must think they have a good idea on hand. Because right now, in the immediate, it just doesn't add up.
Well, we'll see how they look after the holiday when it comes to their big releases, and maybe they'll still be able to sell. Like, for example, like when Indiana Jones comes out and it goes on PC and stuff, maybe they'll sell a bunch of copies on Steam and it'll make sense there. And then they'll obviously have a bunch of Game Pass people that are paying subscription fees. It's just, it seems like PC hasn't been as interested in Game Pass. They're a little more interested maybe in buying the game. And then on Xbox, they seem more interested in subscribing to Game Pass, not as much buying the game. It seems like just two avenues from these different platforms.
I mean, one of the mistakes I think Microsoft made is when they basically committed that every single one of their first party games would be a day one release on PC.
Wow, you're going all the way back to like, what's that, 2014 with a Quantum Break? Just about?
Maybe, yeah.
Like, you're going way back. You're going like a year and a half into the Xbox One life.
But like, as soon as that happened, they just took away so much of an incentive to buy hardware, especially if you're like a PC gamer. Whereas look at Sony's approach. They wait 12, 18 months before they bring a PlayStation 5 game to PC. And while there is a fairly sizable percentage of people who are buying those games on Steam, they still have that sense of urgency and incentive to buy a PlayStation 5. If you want to play Ragnarok when it comes out, you have to get a PlayStation 5. Whereas Microsoft is in the position of, you want to play Indiana Jones? Well, you can play it on your Xbox or you can play it on your PC. We don't care where you play it. But there's no incentive to buy an Xbox if you're that PC gamer, whereas that exact same PC gamer has incentive to buy a PlayStation 5 for Astrobot. I don't think Microsoft has really accounted for that. I don't think they ever really factor that into their plans, how many gamers they would potentially lose on the hardware side. And maybe just now that realization is hitting that you capped yourself. Maybe lower than you thought. The impact was greater than you anticipated, and you just don't know how to pivot. You can't come out of it and say, PC gamers, you're going to get the game 12 months after the console release, because that's going to be a huge negative backlash.
They are, that's. I mean, they're tracking now behind the Xbox One, which was a little surprising when I heard that. I was like, wow, really? Because it felt like the Xbox Series got off to a pretty good start, and it's just kind of slowly sputtered out. So now they're behind the Xbox One, and then I've talked about in the US, and that's like their primary market. And apparently in Europe, it's not looking great against like PlayStation or anything. Like it's looking pretty bad. So I'm not sure. The hardware stuff is interesting because I kind of wonder if there's a bit of a pivot in the background, just in general, with their strategy for next generation because of all this. So that is the thing that I'm really curious about, because we've talked about how Blade doesn't have a platform necessarily next to it when it did this announcement. And if that thing's like 2027 or 2028 or something, yeah, that might just be next gen. That's why it doesn't have a platform. But who knows what next gen looks like with them? It might not be a box as traditionally thought of necessarily. So that's where I am now with it. It's like we're in this here and now with this current platform that we're years into the generation. But what's their move for next gen? Because they say it's going to be, in terms of technology, the biggest leap we've ever seen. And I don't think that's just hardware inside the box.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the biggest leap for technology can mean so many things.
Yeah. So I almost wonder if they have a like a disruptor in the background, and that's why they're kind of going this route now.
I mean, anything is possible. Sure, Microsoft has a vision in mind. It's just a question of, can you make it a reality? And if you do make it a reality, is it going to be something that you can deliver that will excite the fan base? Because that's really their biggest obstacle right now, is getting their fan base back. Though, I mean, you could really look at the Xbox 360 as an anomaly. Look at the original Xbox, Xbox One, and now Series. You could say Microsoft typically sells in the area of 40 to 50 million systems. The 360 was just right time, right place. And you had a year head start with fantastic technology. You introduced everyone to HD gaming, and you had heavy hitters really right out of the gate. You launched with what? You had Dead or Alive 4, you had Perfect Dark, you had Cameo, you had Call of Duty 2. Then in March of 2006, you had Oblivion. You had Fight Night Round 3. You had Dead Rising in August of 2006. You had Gears of War that holiday. You just had a nice flow. You had Viva Pinata. You had Rockstar Presents Table Tennis. You had so many exclusive games within those first 24 months that the PS3 was not getting, that you just took off. Even though you had the Red Ring of Death, you had supply issues. Maybe the 360 was an anomaly, and they're trying to chase the success of something that they will never be able to replicate.
I want to throw this in there, Nate, as we had just talked about the price increase for Game Pass Ultimate, the Game Pass Standard tier that has had day one games omitted from it. Well, the FTC did show up again with a filing after this happened, saying that that's what they were trying to avoid, or at least cut off, was the idea of them fluctuating prices because now they have Activision Blizzard. Well, we did get a response from Microsoft just a couple of hours ago. And their defense of it's a lot of it's just being focused in on that standard tier, that $15 per month tier. The explanation as to why it's not, as the FTC called it, a degraded version of Game Pass, despite the omission of for day one releases, is because this now includes online multiplayer, whereas the previous one did not. That's that's their explanation.
That's the best defense they can probably come up with.
Which means they are never going to make, well, not for a long time, make that online play free, which is unfortunate.
I find it interesting that the FTC is really coming back to this case, because you could definitely make the argument of, why isn't the FTC going after Disney Plus and Netflix for everyone raising prices on some of their services? And we know the FTC has been adamantly against this deal ever since it went through, that they're still trying to find ways to break it apart. And I guess this is their Hail Mary attempt to make something happen here. But I just don't see why a price increase is going to be the situation that completely unravels the ABK deal.
No, I don't think that's, how in, like, they're so entangled now because of all the layoffs that hit, that if you tried to break this up, it would probably destroy Activision Blizzard at this point. Like, it'd be over.
That's the interesting thing, that even though Microsoft now has Activision Blizzard under their umbrella, Activision Blizzard has still kind of operated independently. So
So you
if
think
they
FTC
were
come in
to
and break
be,
it up?
if they were to break it up, Activision would just go back to essentially how they were.
Hmm.
You'd have some managerial problems at play, but they would just go back to being their own independent operation. It doesn't mean they wouldn't have significant financial issues.
Yeah, how would they give Microsoft their money back?
Right. Yeah. I don't know how all that would work. So I'm not really anticipating anything happening with this recent FTC letter. Maybe it would force Microsoft to change the price and go back to what it was.
Yeah, I guess it could do that.
I
They
mean,
seem adamant that, oh no, we've added value to it because it has online multiplayer, which is something that people criticize these console makers for charging for in the first place. So it's just sort of funny that's their defense. Well, we
yeah,
online play is there. It's like, oh great, thanks.
it's going to be an interesting thing to see if it goes anywhere. At this point, I just can't envision it going really any place of any
No,
significance.
I'm not expecting it to, no. But you brought up all the streaming services and stuff, Nate. And it's funny you did because the Halo series has now been canceled on Paramount Plus. 2 seasons they got out of this thing. And then we also had rumors around 343 that we can touch on here. But the Halo TV series is over now. Apparently, they're going to try to pitch it to another streaming service that might want to pick it up. And it's not like that doesn't happen. It seems to happen a lot where a series might move from one streaming service to another because the old one didn't want to keep paying for it. And the new one does try to make a splash. So it wouldn't surprise me if Netflix or Amazon was like, whatever, we'll pay some money for the third season and see what happens. But I'm okay with this series going away and them trying something new, rebooting it. Because what an interesting journey this has been for what was really just 2 seasons, but it felt like 10. It wouldn't stop.
Yeah, I never watched the show, so there's
Good for you.
no
Good.
loss for me. And
Good.
everyone's reaction online was basically that season one wasn't that good, season two got better, but that the showrunners clearly had no love for the source material and didn't know what they were doing with the source material. So maybe after seeing the success of Fallout, Microsoft will be better suited to shop it around to showrunners who have knowledge of the series and have a good idea to take Halo in. But it feels as though it's one of those cases of nothing of value was lost.
It's weird because it feels like the Halo franchise should adapt. I don't say easily because there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it should be very compatible with a series like this, or technically a movie. Although I think a series is probably better, just so they can take time with characters that I would say they should create as original characters. That's their problem, is they're going up against lore that's been around and so ingrained in the games. And what they did with this is they tried to take Master Chief, who was like this legendary character, and humanize him to a degree where he was like your neighbor almost. And it's like, okay, Master Chief is this, this person that shows up in this massive armor that's like weighs a ton, and he just rolls in with the other Spartans. They just take out the Covenant or the Flood or whatever, and it's this incredible thing to see happen, which they did a few times in the series. I will give them credit. The Spartans would show up and they would be like overpowered almost, and they should at some points, even against like elites and different enemies who have shields and plasma weapons that are baking right through people. I get that. But the moment they start having Master Chief walk around without his helmet more than with his helmet, that's when I think they lost a lot of people. Because in the game, we still haven't seen him just take his helmet off and walk around. In the first one, you beat it in Legendary. At the end, you can see, fun little scene, but with I'll just say people on a cliff with an elite and stuff. That's fun. But at the end, when you beat the game, he takes his helmet off, but the camera pans out. It doesn't show you what John 117 looks like. And I think that's the right way to go. You keep the way I would do it if they wanted to reboot the series. What I would do is I would have Master Chief actually not be the main character. And that sounds weird, but I would have an original character, or I would come up with a way to pull maybe like the Spartan program where they have basically children come in and they do experiments, turn them into almost super soldiers. I would follow along with one that you maybe create and ends up at the same timeline with the Master Chief, and he's just like crazy super soldier legend that you see, but you don't get to know, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I'd keep it. Some mystery to Master Chief, and follow along and flesh out other characters. So that's at least how I would approach it. Or you can even show it as maybe a cadet or someone who's not a super soldier, and he just sees these like incredible feats of strength and them CQC taking down elites and like shooting them and stuff. Like that's how I would go about it, so that Master Chief always looks powerful to the audience, and you can have a humanizing moment in there, like what we had with Halo Infinite. While there was a lot of things to criticize in that game, there was a good moment with Chief where he kind of sits down with the pilot, and they sort of have this moment where they connect a bit on like their past and stuff. Like that is a good way to do it without having Master Chief walk around with his helmet and eventually just be completely naked on screen.
See, man, that's the thing, is that the showrunners they didn't care for what they were making. They didn't have any sense of familiarity with the character that they were making. They had a very loose understanding of the source material, and this is why you got such a mediocre show. And you could do better with Halo. There's plenty of novels out there. There's plenty of lore that you could expand upon. You could go pre-Master Chief. You could introduce us to the Flood, the Covenant, or the origins of the Covenant, the creation of the rings. There's so much that you could have done with the series that hopefully Microsoft and 343 and all those involved have been able to take that, take this as a lesson of, we now understand what could work. We know who to shop it around to. We see the success of Fallout. We see the success of The Last of Us. Let's do right by our premier IP. Let's not just give it away to someone who has, an idea and a good price. Let's shop it around. Let's hear the pitches. Let's get an idea of the vision they have. And if they're fans of the franchise and they have a promising idea, roll the dice. Let them take a crack at it. Because the Halo show really just sounds as though it's in the same tier as recent Resident Evil efforts. For whatever reason, no one can make a good Resident Evil piece of media. We get the Netflix movies, we get the Netflix show, and they all run into significant issues. Like, don't try to recreate the games. Take what the games have done, or what the novels have done, and expand upon them with just smart ideas. And Master Chief probably should just be a character of legend. It shouldn't be the main character of the show. It should be something you see glimpses of here and there, or even make the show post Master Chief, where he is just kind of he's a fable legend, almost like a mythical being in the universe. You just hear of his grand adventures and his achievements, and you as a soldier are trying to live up to that. You could go so many different directions with it, just based on the lore. And the fact that they never introduced the Flood in the Halo show also seems very baffling, but they prioritize showing the human side of Master Chief, which nobody cares about. Nobody really cares about Master Chief as an individual. That's not an area that they had to, flesh out or even give to light. It's everything else around the character that mattered.
Yeah. That's an interesting idea going forward in time to where Master Chief is kind of a legend, or even coming up with a way that you're this new cadet who actually has to ends up trying to track down Master Chief or something, like he's out in the galaxy somewhere, stuff like that. Because remember, again, in Infinite, he just kind of came across Chief in space and just found him. It's like something like that. That's actually an interesting idea. That sort of thing where it's more of a legend of Master Chief. Because that was always the idea, is that he did at least represent kind of that belief, like the commercial where they had him there with the plasma. It's like believe or like hope. It's like this mythical figure was able to stand up to the Covenant and elude prophecy and that kind of stuff. So, or they called him Demon. It's like, oh wow, they're scared of one of the militia. One of the humans, quote unquote. They're scared of them. Claw says all they have to do is turn Fall of Reach or Contact Harvest into a series, end at the discovery of Halo, and then say, go play the games now. Fall of Reach would work as, I think, a one-off series, like one season. It's like, look, we're going to tell the story because we all know how it ends. Obviously, it's right in the title, Fall of Reach. But there was a lot of stuff that happened up to that point, and you're right, it does start to set up the game. So I think that'd be really cool to do that. Like, just put all the budget you put into 3 seasons into one and just go crazy. So, and Nate, we did have, I just want to bring this up. We did have a rumor around 343 once again.
Yeah, but this was very quickly dismissed.
Yeah, they were, but I wanted to bring this. It's interesting that this, so when it did come up, it made the rounds quickly, Nate, and people were very quick to look at it and go, that could be. People don't dispute this as fast as they should. And it is kind of telling for the position 343 is in right now that people go, yeah, I could see that. Yeah, they're taking 343 off Halo. It's just this position where people just don't have a lot of trust in them anymore. But the rumor that was going around was that they were now supervising the Halo series and they're going to be outsourcing, having other studios work on it. We've had that go around before, though. This isn't the first time we've had that rumor from what I remember.
I mean, it's not the first time, but it's also a case of what exactly do they mean by this? We know a significant portion of Halo Infinite development was outsourced. Outsourcing is a very common thing in game development. 343 is called 343 because they are the Halo team. So unless they're going to strip 343 of its very identity, the whole reason it was created, the one franchise that it exists for, you will outsource to different studios, but it doesn't mean 343 is not going to have direct involvement with future Halo projects. It also doesn't mean 343 has to have involvement with every Halo project either.
Right. They could technically have someone else work on another aspect to the Halo franchise, but 343 is working on the next Halo. Like the word is they've started. It's happening. We don't know if it's going to be on Unreal Engine or if they're going to keep Swift Space. I recommend personally go to Unreal, but maybe they're like, we spent a lot of money on this engine. We're going to make it work. It seemed like that was the bane of their existence, trying to get this thing out the door and then trying to get an update because of the slip space, because of that Microsoft contractor position where they, like every 16 months or something, people cycle through. And
I mean, that's the problem. That was one of the big problems with Halo Infinite, is that by using slip space and using external contractors, is that these external contractors had no experience or exposure to slip space. So had they used something like Unreal Engine, that's a common engine. It's middleware. They would have had familiarity with it and could have come into the development of Halo Infinite and immediately understood the tools. Instead of, here's slip space. Well, I'm not familiar with this. You have to learn this as quick as possible because you're on a 16-month contract and we need to get this done in the next 18 months. Well, I probably need 6 months to really become accustomed to the tools. And that's a long time for an external developer to become accustomed to the tools you're using. So that was just a mistake right out of the gate. But with this rumor, I mean, you had Jez Corden came out within, about 12 hours, maybe 24 hours of it.
I could have told him it was wrong. I could have told him that. Like, no, there's not. That 343 is Halo.
He came out very quick to say this is a tale of pure fiction. Now, I mean, what does that mean? Again, of course, the next Halo game is going to be outsourced to some degree. That's not shocking.
Yeah, like environments.
Games are.
Animations. Yeah.
So, I mean, it just seems as though every year or so we get a new rumor that involves 343 being an incompetent studio and that Microsoft is looking around to others. Even after Halo Infinite, you had fans, you had podcasters saying, now that Microsoft owns id and they own Arcane and such, why don't you give them a chance at making a Halo game? So this just feels as though it's an extension of the conversation fans have had over the years, and somehow it became a rumor that whether or not it has base or not, who knows?
I think with their leadership now in place with Pierre Heinz, I think they're going to be in good shape for the next one. I would recommend at this point though, and it probably isn't. I don't know. Maybe it is good. I would just reboot things personally. That's just. It seems like stuff got off the rails, and I feel like you could reboot it and it would be okay. but it's after Halo Infinite, which felt like they duct taped 2 games together there as you went through the campaign. I think it would be a better idea for them to go back in time and just try to start from scratch a bit. But
There's any
it's
number
going
of
to be a bit.
directions. I mean, you have the rumor out there that they are going to remake Halo
Mhm.
Combat Evolved.
Remake Halo 1. Yep.
So I mean, that would be the thing. Is that 343 or was that project outsourced?
I bet that would. Well, I was going to say
Right.
outsourced. I wouldn't be
Right.
shocked if 343 did that.
Like they'd probably have some involvement, but I could see the
Yes.
majority of it being outsourced.
Yeah, sure.
And
They
people
don't need
would
to
go back
they
to
don't need
this
to rely on
rumor
it.
and say, "Oh, look, it's true." Be like, 343 is working on a new original Halo game. This is something that they only had minimal involvement in, but they still had a supervisor role. There's a lot of things that go on.
I would remake that first one in Unreal, Nate, just to get that going and figure everything
Yes.
out, and then set up your next big push for Halo for next gen, because clearly that's where we are now. A lot of the games we're talking about, by the way, that are getting announced in the next year or two, because the belief is that Microsoft is going to move to next gen earlier than expected, potentially holiday 2026, maybe 2027. We're like, oh, maybe that's next gen. Yeah, I mean, the next Halo could legitimately be next gen at this rate. So,
I mean, that's going to be the thing. If I were to remake Halo Combat Evolved, I would use Unreal Engine because it's a good test. It's a good test to use those in-game systems and the mechanics with the engine, become familiar with everything. And when you look back at the Master Chief Collection, a lot of atmosphere was lost in Combat Evolved from the original game. So this way, go in, take the time, become accustomed to it. And we've seen tons of games every generation where a company does do that type of test release, where they put a game on a certain platform to say, okay, how is our engine running on that hardware? All right, it runs fairly well. We know where we have to tinker with things. And then when they do their next true ground up release for that hardware, it blows away their prior effort. So for Halo and 343 to do this with Unreal Engine by using Combat Evolved as that base would make a lot of sense, assuming that rumor actually has legitimacy and we do see a remake of the first Halo game.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't mind it. Just remake of the first one. I know people say we already technically had one, which we did. But if it's going to help them get to the finish line for the next one with Unreal Engine, why not? Hey, I'm not going to complain about more Halo, especially remake of potentially the best. People like Halo 2 a lot. I get it, but Halo 1, man, that was a special time. Special time.
Halo 2 will always have one significant flaw to me, is that all of the marketing showed you fighting on Earth. And you never got there.
Well, at the end, you're going to finish the fight and then cut credits.
Yes. So the whole game was just leading up to a tease that they teased you with all the marketing. But Halo Combat Evolved, that was a generation moment. That was a game of the generation. The AI, everything about the game, it just pushed first-person shooters to the next level on the console scene.
That online play though for Halo 2, man, that was next level stuff.
Yeah, that made Xbox Live. That's why Xbox Live became Xbox Live. People were like, "Yo,
that was it right there.
Play online. This is it. This is awesome."
That was it. Back then during high school, I remember we'd still stay up like super late at night. We're not, we had like a big test the next day. We were like dead to the world after going to bed at like 3 a.m., getting up at 6. That's set me up for the workforce though at that time, learning not to have to get a lot of sleep to function the next day. Those are the good days. And then it's set into motion. We've eliminated just about all couch co-op nowadays. So there you go. Shout out to Halo 2 for making that happen.
Halo Combat Evolved was one of the very rare PC games I bought because it had multiplayer. And you could play it online.
Yeah, but you needed to use Halo, the first one.
Yes.
The first one used GameSpy. The second one used Vista Windows Live that no one wanted to use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played it on PC as well. And it was a big deal because of that, because of the online play. You had to hit get list and look at all the rooms, then join a room. And if you had a clan tag, you actually had to add it into your name and stuff. It was really funny.
But it was like I got to play Halo 1 online. I was like, damn, I got to buy the PC version. And I did, just so I could play it online because first game didn't have online on console. That was a special moment.
We had a really bad, like we had a really junk laptop. So in my house, we had a bunch of like laptops and PCs because my dad was did a lot of IT work for like big companies, corporations, and banks and stuff. So he's always moving around different jobs, and they would give him a laptop whenever he gets there. Like first day, here's a laptop. I already have one. Here's a new one. That's just all of our company stuff. So he'd wipe the old one and just leave it in the house. Like whatever he has on his laptop, here you go. They left it with me. So one was like a Sony Vaio and it was terrible, but it did run Halo enough to where we could get into the match and it would play at like 50 frames or something, but it couldn't render camo correctly. So if somebody picked up camo, they showed up on screen bright white. Like just completely white, so you could see them. So at one point we would use that laptop when we go online in the party as the driver in a Warthog, because when they were driving around, if someone on the other team had the camo, they could see him perfectly and they would just run him over and the person had no idea how it was happening. Those are the good days.
That's messed up.
Clashing drivers of the PC days back then. those are the good days. It was that and Age of Empires over LAN. Those were like our two big games. We played them constantly.
Yeah, I never got into LAN.
That's all
never
we
did
did.
LAN parties or anything like that.
That's all we did. That Age of Empires and Xbox, original Xbox. We would do a lot of LAN parties with that and the original Halo Combat Evolved. And we were still rolling with CRTs back then. So people had to load them into the back of cars or carry them down the street trying not to drop them. And that was the worst because these things were like 50, 60, 70 pounds. It was bad. So people would like, if you looked out your window randomly, you might just see two like teenagers walking down the street, one on the side, on the other side, walking this TV down the road. That's how it was. And you'd run LAN cables and crossover cables, and there'd be a modem or there'd be a router somewhere in the house, and cables going all downstairs and stuff. Man, what we did to play Halo back then.
But everyone did it.
We made it work. Yeah, we got 16 people at one point in there. Probably more than that because we took turns, but we filled it up. We had 4 people per TV split screen on 4 TVs. It was great.
Yeah, you'd see in EGM at the time, they would have pictures of Halo LAN parties. And you'd just see huge tables with the giant TVs and everyone playing a game. So gaming has come a long way since our youth.
We'd play up like all night. We'd like go to bed at like 4 a.m. Sometimes we wouldn't even go to bed. We'd just be up and it'd be like 6 a.m. Be like, why is the sun coming out? Oh, all right, let's go for a walk or go get some food or something. It was like that. Those were the good days. I actually kind of feel bad for the newer generation coming up. I feel bad for 2 things for them. One, missing out on those all night LAN parties with like consoles. PCs, this still happens, but like console specifically, that was like a different ball game. And I'm thinking of original Xbox, but 360, that's still kind of in that era. And old school midnight releases. Because I'm thinking about like when Halo 2 came out, again, that was a crazy midnight release. Call of Duty, when Modern Warfare came out, Call of Duty 4, dude, that was one of the crazy, that and Halo 3 were 2 of the craziest midnight releases I've ever seen. And I just don't think the generation now will ever experience something like that again.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, maybe Grand Theft Auto 6.
But even then, they'll probably have like a 50% digital to physical ratio. Remember that at that time, there was no digital download. You went to the store and got it.
I mean, back then, as weird as it sounds now, you had to make a pre-order. You had to reserve a game because games sold out.
Yep, you did.
Like that's a real thing that used to happen. That if you didn't have your pre-order, you'd go to GameStop, be like, "Oh, we only have enough for reservations." You'd go to Best Buy, they sold out. You went to Target, they sold out. And you'd be sitting there saying, shit, what do I do? You'd have to wait a few days for the next shipment to come in. And at the time, EB Games or GameStop could put you on a list that if someone didn't come in within the first, 24 or 48 hours to pick up their reservation, they could call you so you could come get it in. Or they would have that secondary list that once they got the next shipment in, they would call you to let you know the game has arrived. But that's something the youth will never experience. They will never face a game being sold out and having to wait because you could always just get a digital copy.
I'm going to go to Grand Theft Auto 6 minute release. The chat has convinced me. I saw one person mention it, so now I'm in. I'm going to GTA 6 midnight release, making it happen. I guess at GameStop. Which, by the way, for Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, I didn't work the midnight release for that one, but I was at GameStop and I had to go out. It was around open, and I had to go pick up more because we were short for that midnight release. We didn't have enough, so we were gonna have, I think, 1,400 people pick up pre-orders that night, and this is at like 11 a.m. It was more than, I know it was more than 1,000, and I want to say it was right around that number because I had to go. So I had to get in my car, drive out to meet the district manager between stores, and he kicks open like his little BMW thing. It's like he's like the BMW 2-seater, the typical like district manager with like the slick back hair. And he kicks open this little BMW, and he has like 2 massive boxes that he like shoved in there and put the one seat down, and he's giving them to me. He's like, "Here, put these in your car and then go right back to the store." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Then when you get back there, count them." And he's writing on the outside of the box, 800 copies of Call of Duty were in my car, and I'm driving back, and they were like 360 and PS3 mixed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 800. How weird would this be if I got pulled over? And I was in like an 84 Mustang, and I'm driving back, and I'm like, this would be a very awkward scene if I get pulled over with 800 Call of Duties, and it was still like a 20-minute drive back. Like, that'd be my luck. That's how close it was. We were cutting it that close back then for midnight releases with something as important as a Call of Duty. That's how it was. It was really like that then.
Yeah, I remember when Gears of War launched and my GameStop I was working at, for some reason, the entire area didn't get shipment, and only a handful of stores got like the copies that they had for pre-orders. My store was one of them, and we had like 50 pre-orders, and all the people came in to pick up their pre-orders. But because word got out that every single store in the area didn't get copies, except for the handful, those stores were then telling those consumers, well, go to those stores. Maybe they'll have extras or something. So we only had the 50 copies, but we probably had 300 people show up, all asking for a copy of Gears of War. And we only have enough for the pre-orders. We didn't get another shipment of games for well over a week. I forget why it happened, but somehow GameStop screwed that up.
Yeah, you'd hear those stories where other stores would call us, "You got more of these? You got more?" No, we're out. So they have to tell all these people. And I think back then we didn't have pre-orders. Eventually we got pre-orders in the system. Before that, we kept pre-orders in a shoebox. It was a real thing.
God.
It wasn't in the system. Eventually, they brought in a new system where it could be stored. But before that, we had a shoebox on the back. So remember, that was back when we were still when PS2 pre-orders would come in. So like people would come in and pre-order God of War 2. We would print out a receipt, and it would go in a shoebox that would go in the back drawer. And I think like 2 months after I was there, they got the system that would allow you to put it into the computer. But that's how it was. Someone would come in and be like, "I'm here to pick up this pre-order." And we'd go back and be like, "1 second." And we'd get the big shoebox out, and we'd have to like go through trying to find their last name. It was crazy. That's how old I feel like we are. It's like we had a shoebox with pre-orders in them.
That's the thing. Like, you had to hold on to your reservation slip. You needed that receipt. You would walk in with it, and they'd look at it and say, "Okay, let me check." I mean, I remember working when the 360 launched, and everyone remembers the debacle that was. No store had enough to cover the pre-orders because EB Games never cut off pre-orders. They kept taking them, and Microsoft didn't ship enough systems. I don't think we finished our pre-order log until sometime in February.
Yeah, it came out in November, from what I remember. And my friend he got all the stuff. He was like an only child. I got all the stuff, right? All the stuff came out. It didn't matter. He got it. And so he got the Xbox 360 in for pre-order. He didn't get his until like 2 weeks before Christmas, I think. So he waited like a month and a week, maybe like 5 weeks or something.
That's not too bad compared to most. I had to wait. How we set it up is if you work there and you had a pre-order, if someone didn't come in and pick up their pre-order in the designated time, the manager would say, "Okay, if you can pick it up in the next 24 hours, it's yours. Otherwise, we're going to go to the list." And I was on Christmas break during high school, so it had to be the last week of December. And I was supposed to be going to Maine with my girlfriend at the time to look at colleges. And the day before we're set to leave, my manager calls me at about 9 p.m. He's like, if you can come in tomorrow, you can pick up your 360. I was like, dude, I'm going to Maine tomorrow morning. He's like, if you can come in tomorrow, you can get the 360. And I go to pick her up in the morning. I was like, we have to stop at the mall. She's like, why? I'm like, I have to pick up my Xbox 360. And she's giving me a look. I'm like, I need to pick it up. I'm like, I already have games at home. I already had Project Gotham 3, Perfect Dark, Cameo, Call of Duty 2, Dead or Alive. I'm like, I have games. I'm like, I have to at least pick it up. She's like, well, it's not coming with us. I'm like, I'll drop it off at my house. Pick it up. I had to drive all the way home. Put it down. My brother's looking. I'm like, you don't open this. I'm like, I'm back in 2 days. This better still be sealed.
He's lucky you didn't pull the sick card. Like, I'm sick.
Yeah. I'm like,
go look at colleges yourself.
She would have been so pissed off at me if I was like, I'm sick, and found out I was just sitting at home playing Project Gotham 3 on a 360. I was like,
I mean, that's pretty
bad
sick.
Timing.
That's pretty sick. You weren't lying.
Yeah, I had to go to Maine.
Hey, that's sick right there.
Go look at University of New England in Kennebunkport.
Yeah, I think we skipped. I think fifth period, because it was like, fifth. I think we skipped fifth period, but he got the call. He's like, he's part of yearbook, so he would come in and be like, "I need you for yearbook." And I get out. We're going to get the Xbox. All right, cool. Let's go. Just skip fifth period. Go get the Xbox. Just played that the rest of the day and then into the night. It was awesome. Nope. Those are the good days. I'm telling you. Anyone younger now doesn't know. Anyone older, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, now kids just go on Amazon, pre-order, and have it delivered to their house on launch day.
Yeah, it's getting very easy for that to happen now, to where the parents don't even realize until it's too late, and they're like, "Why is there a $70 thing on my car?" Oh, okay.
I mean, for the 360 launch, I stood in front of a Circuit City on launch morning with a girl.
City.
With a girl from my class, and we're like, oh, let's see if we can get one. We were number 7 and 8 in line. Number 5 in line was a priest. And they had 4 systems available for those who didn't have a reservation. So I'm like, damn. I'm like, what chance did we have if God didn't even give it to the priest who was number 5? And we were like, what do we do now? She's like, we can try another store. I was like, I'm like, everyone else already has a line. So we just quit. It's very sad.
Good days. Yep. Disappointment and sadness, but in person.
Yeah.
I tell you to your face, you weren't going home with that.
Yep. They'd look at you. They just walked out. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's all we have. And everyone would be like, fuck.
The good days. The good days. Well, I think that's it for our show. Talked about a lot of Xbox stuff. Took a stroll down memory lane. But it was fun. It was fun. Because it feels good to be back with DirectXbox, and we will be back again in 2 weeks' time. Don't worry. We're not going to be able to do an after show tonight, but we will be doing one to follow up 2 weeks from now, that show. So we're going to have fun there. Any parting words, Nate, for the good people out there?
Well, I just see a user in the comments section saying, I don't talk about Xbox enough. So good news for you. Tomorrow, MVG and a special guest and myself talk about Xbox for 2 hours on the Nate the Hate Show. Talk about a lot of things Xbox on that show.
A special guest, too.
A special Xbox-related guest.
Xbox-related? Is it Ran?
It is not. Someone who's never been on the show before.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. All right, there you go. You can tune in. Check him out there over on Nate the Hate. 2-hour show coming up. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back, though, in 2 weeks. Talk about a bunch of Xbox stuff. Of course, we do have Xbox coming up to Gamescom next month, so we're going to start thinking about some of our predictions for that as well, Nate. See if they have anything good on deck there, any rumors and stuff break on the lead up to that show. But as for Nate and myself,
about Gamescom in the episode.
Oh, there it is. See, all right. He's already on the ball. So make sure you check out Nate's 2-hour Xbox video tomorrow at some point going up. Awesome. Exciting stuff. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks for DirectXbox, and we'll see you guys then.